Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 73 of Paranormal Pendle, broadcasting as usual to the Paranormal UK network at paukradio.com. So, I am absolutely delighted to welcome a new guest to the podcast. We haven't spoken before, but he sent me an email that has really piqued my interest. So, welcome, Andrew Hardy. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, mate. Yourself?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, I've had a few technical issues before we set off, but I think we're okay. I'm just going to double check that my sound is working properly, and yes, it seems to be, which is always good, so people can actually hear what we're talking about. So, you sent me a really interesting email. You've had quite an interesting time with regards to the paranormal and the unexplained and UFOs, and also Shadow Man as well, which I'm really interested in because I've had a Shadow Man experience myself.
Ah, right, okay.
So let's start off then. How did it all start for you? How did you become interested in the unexplained?
So I suppose mate, it started off with my first experience would have been when I was four, going on five, and my mum, my dad, my sister, and obviously myself, all lived in just your standard like terraced house, mate, in the street back in Thornaby, where I'm originally from. And one night, I used to be terrified of the dark, mate, like a lot of kids are. So they always used to leave the lantern light on for me if I need to go to out in the middle of the night. So one night, mate, I've jumped out of bed, and as you came out of my bedroom door, mate, and you turned right along the landing, the bathroom door was straight in front of you. And then next to the bathroom door was like, like a little alcove with a window. And that's where my mum used to keep the washing basket. And so I've jumped out of bed, mate, turned right, and I've walked towards the bathroom. And as I've got close to the bathroom, a figure has stepped out of the alcove, and he would have been. So my sister made 6 foot tall, a lot taller than me. So that's how I've always gauged how tall he would have been. So, and with it being an old Victorian house and having tall ceilings, I've always said that he would have been about 7 foot tall. And his body, mate, it was a bodybuilder's type build, like really muscular, quite big. And I've always described him, mate, as, when you're a kid, you take all the clothes off an action man. That's what his body was like totally smooth. And he was burnt orange, red in colour. He had black, his eyes were pure black, and he had two little horns on his head. Maybe I've always said, when a bull just starts to get its horns, and they're maybe like an inch or an inch and a half big. and that's what he looked like, mate. And he stepped out of the alcove. And then obviously I see him. I'm stood frozen, petrified. And he let out a little chuckle and then smirked, like quite sinister, and then reached out to grab me. As he's reached out to grab me, that's kind of, I don't want to say broken a spell, but it's kind of kicked me out of being frozen there. Right. I've then spun around and I've took off to my mum and dad's bedroom was directly behind me. So I've took off through to there. Obviously, I'm hysterical. And once they've calmed me down, I kept saying to them, I've seen the devil, I've seen the devil. And then it was my dad who said to my mum, how does he know what the devil is? Because back then, mate, I'd been 4. No one had spoke about the devil. I can't ever remember anyone, telling me about the devil. And then not too long after that, mate, we ended up moving house to the house my mum and dad are in now.
Do you think your parents saw something then? Because it seems quite a coincidence, doesn't it, that you sort of moved very, very sort of shortly afterwards. You'd seen something.
No, mate. The only thing my mum ever said she saw was that she was laid in bed one night and she felt like a heaviness on her legs. Okay. And when she woke up, she saw an old woman sat on the end of the bed crying. And so I was raised Catholic, mate, as well. And my family's Catholic. So my mum started saying the Hail Mary and the Our Father. And she said after 5 or 10 minutes, the heaviness on her legs lifted, and when she opened her eyes, the lady was gone. So that was the only other thing, mate, that I knew that went on in the house. Nobody else, mate, ever saw anything or experienced anything.
I think that was probably enough, though, wasn't it? When you think about it, I mean, you
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
must have been frightened, and maybe it was that they thought, you know, bugger this, we're moving,
yeah.
sort of thing. So how did that affect you then? I mean, did you see it again, or was it just a sort of one-off?
No, mate, it's been that was a one-off, and then nothing ever happened to me, mate, again, or nothing that I remember anyway.
Hmm.
The only thing that ever coincided with it was with me being raised Catholic. The rule in my family was once you hit 16, you then could decide whether you want to go to church or not anymore.
Right.
And most of us decided that once we hit 16, we didn't go anymore. And so I would have been around about 15, and with me being one of the youngest cousins, I was pretty one of the only like teenagers who was there out of my family, and one of my cousins came down, and so he would have been a lot older than me, Craig. He probably would have been maybe 22, 23.
Right. Yeah.
And I can remember saying to my mum, "What's I won't say his name, but I said, what's he doing here?" And my mum was like, "Oh, I don't know what he's doing back," because he hadn't been there, mate, for what, 6 years, 7 years.
Right. Right.
And as like mass finishes, as the service finishes, he said to my mum, "Can I speak to our Andrew?" And mum was like, "Yeah, of course you can. Go and speak to him." And he come up to me, and before he said anything, I don't know why I said it. I said to him, "You've seen it, haven't you?" Now he didn't know what I meant. Obviously, only I know what I meant. Obviously, I meant that devil demon thing that I saw. And
Yeah.
he started getting teary eyed, and he said, "Yeah, I've seen something." So I said, "What did you see?" And he went, "No, no, I want to know what you saw." So I've told him what I've saw, um, and then I said, and I said, what did you see? And he didn't say anything, mate. He just said, "Yeah, that's the same as me," and just walked off.
All right.
So that's the only time, mate, I've ever had any interaction with any other family member over it.
And so your cousin saw this in the same house or
No, mate, no, different
a
house. So
different
he
house?
was, yeah. So he was in back then, mate. He would have been in the flat. So it was still in Thornaby, but
Yeah.
it was a totally different area of Thornaby. And I think, if memory serves, he was in a flat at the time.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So maybe it was an entity then that was somehow attached to members of your family.
Potentially, mate. I mean, I always thought back in the so when I got older and I started being more at the paranormal and that type of stuff.
Hmm.
I always remember my gran on my dad's side, mate, died when I was 8,
Right.
but she always used to have Halloween parties, and she was in the local pit, mate, for having haunted the wardrobe. So I always assumed, mate, that me being into paranormal and me having experiences was always associated with that side.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I started talking about this and doing a YouTube channel where my mum then watched me do an episode with Paul Sinclair
Yeah.
on Truth Proof.
Right.
And then after the episode, mate, she actually rang me, and it was maybe about 10:30 at night. So I answered her what something was wrong. And then she told me about all the stuff that happened to them when they were kids in
Right.
Thornaby. Um, and then that changed my mind to maybe it is actually my mum's side, because the cousin who said he'd seen it, he was on my mum's side as well. So
Right.
it seems that most of the stuff, mate, came through
Yeah.
my mum's side.
Yeah. So perhaps your mum's side of the family then. I mean, they said that some people are more attuned, aren't they, to this sort of thing, and can sort of tune in a lot easier than others. So maybe your mum's side of the family, there's something in your mum's genes or DNA, or your mum's family's DNA, where you guys are able to sort of pick up on these things easier than other people.
It definitely seems that way, mate. I mean, when she spoke to me that night after I did that episode, she rang me up and said that she can remembers hearing the boy. So she was one of 7, so there was 4 boys, 3 girls.
Yeah.
Typical Catholic family. And she said she could remember, mate, the boys on a night time screaming in their bedroom, and they said there used to be an old man who used to appear in the corner of the bedroom, and used to torment them at night, and used to terrify them so much so that one of my uncles, mate, used to go to bed with a crucifix every night.
Right.
That's how bad it was. So once she told me all those stories, then that switched my thinking to, obviously it wasn't my dad's side, it was my mum's side all along.
Yeah. Yeah, that must have been quite scary. No, yeah, it's yeah, my mum's family were all Catholic, Irish Catholics.
Yep,
So
same as.
yeah, they were all whopping big families. They settled in Liverpool and then moved out from there. So 10 of them, 5 girls, 5 boys,
Oof.
2 bedrooms,
Yep, typical.
2 bedrooms and 2 beds in one bedroom. The 5 girls in one bed and 5 boys in the other. So you joined the military then
Yes, I did, mate. Yeah.
when you grew up. So can you tell me anything about that, or are you still down by the official secret
No,
site?
mate, no, nothing like that. Yeah, so when I joined, mate, I ended up on Dartmoor, and the whole point of being on Dartmoor, mate, was we were doing a beat up course before we went on the All Lambs Commando course, and I was maybe there, mate, for maybe 10 months,
Right.
before we went off down to Livingston. And I had no idea, mate, to be fair, how crazy that place was. And to be fair, Craig, before that, I was only ever really into like the paranormal side of stuff, into ghosts, really, paranormal like investigation type thing. I hadn't ever researched it or heard anything about cryptids in Britain or strange lights, or I wasn't even really into UFOs back then,
Yeah.
or anything like that. I was purely paranormal investigating type stuff. So when I got there, mate, I went in kind of very naive into what I would experience there. So the first thing that happened, mate, that kind of kicked it off was because we were there all the time and we knew Dartmoor, mate, like the back of our hand. We were getting ready to go out one weekend, one Saturday afternoon, go down to Wexeter. And the training sergeant came in and said, "Look, lads, there's a runner is out on the moor. He's been missing overnight. Search and rescue have asked if we can help look for him. More hands on the ground, quicker chance of finding him." So, yep, so throws our kit on, mate, and we heads off on the moor. And we're in pairs. And wasn't out there long, mate, maybe about an hour and a half. And it comes over the radio that they found him, so we can head back into camp. So makes our way back in. And as we're getting changed, the lads I was living with, mate, then knew I was into ghosts and that type of stuff. And as we're getting changed, ready to go back out, one of them says, "You need to go down to the ambulance, Andy, and speak to that runner we just found. He's got some story for you." And I'm like, "What?" And he was like, "I'm not spelling it, mate. Go down and ask him." So I've took off, mate, in my shorts and I've ran down to the car park. And as I've got there, mate, the ambulance is leaving. And I'm like, so
So,
mate, I've
just to clarify, in case people don't know what a runner is it somebody who's deserting?
Oh no, mate, no, sorry, Craig. It was just a guy who was out on Dartmoor running. So he was
Oh, I
just
see. Got
it
you.
was just that
Sorry,
type of thing.
I
Yeah, it was just a
misunderstood.
yeah, it
Right.
was sorry, mate. He was just
I
a normal guy
thought
who
you
went
meant
running.
running. Meant somebody who was
No, it was just a
trying to
normal
escape.
civilian mate who doing that running. Yeah.
Fair enough. Got you.
So I've missed the ambulance, mate. So I've walked back up. So when I got back in, I've said to them, what's the score then? And they said, they were down Culver Steps, mate, and one of the lads just took his water bottle out for a drink. He's dropped it and it's rolled down the steps. And where it stopped, when he's picked up, he's hit the foot of the guy who they were looking for. And he was covered, mate, in leaves, moss, mud, totally camouflaged. We couldn't see him. And obviously, they've scraped all the stuff off him and they found him. And they've picked him, I think he'd broke his ankle, if memory serves. And as they're taking him back, mate, to like the ambulance, like to get him sorted, one of the lads asked him, "Why on earth did you cover yourself up like that? Like, if we hadn't have accidentally found you, we would have walked straight past you." And he said that a big hairy man had found him and he'd covered him over with moss and leaves and mud to keep him warm until help arrived.
Right.
And that was the first case. I mean, that kind of set the tone for what would be a crazy experience on Dartmoor.
Yeah. So what else happened on Dartmoor then? I mean, that's quite bizarre, isn't it, when you think about
Very strange, very strange. Because up until then, Craig, I'd never heard of. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know what to make of it at the time, because I never heard of anyone saying a British Bigfoot. I never heard of the Green Man. Hadn't heard anything like that.
Yeah.
So I suppose the next thing that happened, mate, was we were on exercise, and there was 3 sections, mate. So eight man per section, so 24 of us. out on the train area, and on the night time, mate, we had our harbour area was set up in a triangle, so you had 3 points you could come and go from. And 9 times out of 10, mate, I was like in a command position, so I'd be section commander type thing. So when that happened, you never did stag duty during the night. But the odd time, mate, if lads were flagging, I would get up in the middle of the night. I'd do a stint, just to help the lads out. So this night, mate, I've got up in early hours of the morning, and I've went over and I've said, look, you go and get your head down. I'll do your 2 hour stint, and then I'll go to bed when this is finished. So lads like, happy days. So he's left. So I'm laid down there, mate, the slag suspicion. Usually, Craig, when it's the middle of the night and it's cold, you try and have a bit of banter with each other, try and keep each other going. And I've been there, laid down there for maybe half an hour. And the guy next to me has not said anything. So I've said to him, are you all right? Like, what's a crack? And he went, and there was a big boulder, mate. I say big. It was big enough for your hard behind, but I'm not talking anything monstrous. And this lad next to me said, there's somebody behind that boulder. So I've said, how long have you been watching him for? And he's like, the past hour. And I'm like, right. So he said, look at the left-hand side of the boulder and you'll see him peek out. So I'm looking, I mean, must have been looking maybe 10 minutes. And I thought, he's just tired. He's seeing things. And it was full moon, mate, so it was bright. There's like the great illumination on Dartmoor. And literally, as I'm about to look away, I seen this shadow figure step out from beyond the boulder. And I've always said, Craig, his skin looked like, wetsuit material.
Mm.
But he looked blacker than the night, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like he was so black, and it always looked like he was absorbing the light off the moon. Like any bit of light that came in just got sucked in. And he was nuclear black, like he was a crazy black color. And then on his head he had 2 horns. And so I saw him, and then this lad next to me saw him. And so it clearly wasn't a member of the training staff, because when you're in the army, you've got a signature style, so you're pretty much squared off with Bergen, weapon, rifle, everything's pretty much squared off.
Yeah.
And he had nothing on him. Like, he was absolutely smooth. Like I say, he was just pure black. And so this lad left to go and get the new guy coming in. And those 5 minutes felt like the longest 5 minutes in the world, because I'm just stood there looking at this thing. And then every so often, mate, it would go back behind the boulder and then come back out. So I'm laid there. So when the new guy comes in, I thought to myself, I'm not going to say anything to the new guy. I want to see if he says anything to me. So he then said to me, Andy, have you seen anyone behind that boulder? And I've said, why'd you ask? He said, because I can see someone coming out from behind the boulder. Interesting fact though, mate, he thought he had a top hat on.
Yeah.
So when I've left, the next morning when I've got up, I've spoke to all lads who did stag in that period. And I think there was 5 of us. Three said he had a top hat, 2 said he had horns, or the other way around. And that was, mate, that was the shadow figure that I saw on Dartmoor.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, different people have different perceptions of what's seeing.
Yeah.
So
Like
some are seeing something with horns, like yourself. Some are seeing something with a hat. But it's interesting that you mention about how black it looked, because when I saw a similar figure, mine was wearing a hat.
Interesting.
Very tall hat. Like a sort of Victorian stovepipe hat.
Yeah.
Very tall hats. But the rest of the body was exactly as you describe it. So very black, almost like a black hole pulling light into it.
Yeah.
That black, it's pulling light in rather than giving something off. And you'd think that if you saw a figure that had a sort of stovepipe hat on, you think that the rest of what it was wearing would be sort of Victorian or Edwardian, something like that. But it wasn't. It's exactly how you described it, and you're the first person to describe it in a way that I remember seeing it when I saw my version of this. what I call the Shadow Man, or what other people call the Hat Man. But it's interesting the perception that some of you were seeing it with horns and not a hat. I found that really interesting.
Because when he said to me, mate, he saw a top hat.
Mm,
That's what threw me,
yeah,
and I thought, well, are we seeing the same thing, mate? But like you say, perceiving it different, or is the two figures
yeah,
and we're seeing it different times, you know? And like so, once that happened, mate, in the morning when when the training staff come in the morning, or the director stuff, I sent them, were any of yous out here last night?
mm,
And he said to me, none of us really were back in Plymouth for they were back in Plymouth for something, mate. So nobody was there. They
yeah.
didn't get back to. So it was definitely nobody from our side anyway. That to pull that out there.
Hear any sightings or talk to any of the locals about big cats on Dartmoor? Because obviously, I mean, it's fairly close to Bodmin Moor, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've got the famous beast of Bodmin. And I had a really interesting conversation actually. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm taking over the
No,
discussion,
no.
but I had a really interesting conversation with a guy. We stayed on a farm in a little B&B in a farm on Bodmin Moor a couple of years ago. Well, about 3 or 4 years ago now. And I was talking to the guy that owned the farm about. I just happened to say to him, "Have you ever?" And it was a bit tongue in cheek because I expected him to take the piss.
Yeah.
I said, "Have you ever seen the Beast of Bodmin?" Well, about half an hour later, he told me about all the times that he'd found sheep up trees, mangled and eviscerated. He'd heard noises at night from across the valley. He lived quite close to his farm was quite close to a valley where there was a river running through it, and they'd found very large, what he described as cat tracks in the mud by the river, and so on. So I actually walked away from that conversation thinking, did that just really happen? Because I expected him just to laugh at me and go, "What are you talking about?" But he was deadly serious, and it was a thing about finding sheep carcasses up trees that really got me interested, because obviously that's typical big cat
Yeah.
behavior. So just wondering if there was any sort of big cat stories that you came across when you were on Dartmoor.
So the thing about Dartmoor is, mate, every day we were out in the training area, you would see, mate, double-digit sheep carcasses
Yeah,
that had been eaten. So you would see that every day, mate. But because I didn't know anything about anything being on Dartmoor back then, I didn't really give it too much attention. It kind of just became part and parcel um of the day, really, seeing that many sheep carcasses. The only thing that ever happened, mate, big cat wise, so I've never seen anything like that. But when we were leaving or camping, we were packing all our kit away, some of the old guys would come down and say, "Good luck, guys, all the best," type thing. And as these guys came in, mate, we were talking about that big hairy man story. And one of the lads was like, as we're packing up, he was like, "At least you've got a cool story, mate, for when we leave you," type thing. What do you think it was? Do you think it was a Bigfoot, that type of thing? And they would ribbing me a bit, but it was all good fun.
yeah.
And a couple of these guys, mate, would come in, overheard us, and said, "What you two talking about?" And when I told him, he went, "Oh, funny you should say that." He said, "Back in the early 90s, we were stationed up here on and off for 3 years, and our task was to catch the big cats."
Okay.
So it was definitely recognised, mate, at a government level,
Mm.
a big enough level for someone in the MOD to say, "You need to send lads onto Dartmoor to try and capture these things."
Yeah, to trap them.
And he did say, mate, he did say he'd seen it 3 times. He'd been up there, he'd seen one, but they'd failed to get it.
Yeah,
But I never saw any personally, mate. No.
yeah. Interesting. They're definitely up there, aren't they? And in fact, I think they're all over, aren't they? I mean, we'll get
Oh,
to
100%, mate. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we'll get to your neck of the woods shortly, up in the northeast, and the area around Bempton and that sort of area, obviously, where Paul is based, and that particular area around there seems to be particularly active.
Mm.
You mentioned that you went to Afghanistan. Um, can't even begin to think. I'm not going to ask you how that was, because that's not what we're here for on the podcast. But you have my utmost respect for what you must have seen and what you must have done. But you mentioned that you had a UFO sighting when you're out there, so I'm really interested in that.
Yes, but yeah. So this would have been, Craig, back in 2013, and we were in the fob, and back then, mate, I fired a missile system,
Okay.
and for the people listening, mate, or watching, imagine effectively imagine a tank, but instead of a turret with a long barrel on, I had 6 missile pods, and each one had a missile in.
Yeah.
And nobody, mate, in the world had that apart from us. Even the Americans didn't have it. It was classed as secret, mate, when I did it.
Okay.
And yeah, so we were laid on target, mate, one day, and there's 3 people. There was the DC who was in charge, me who fired the missile, operated it, and then the guy next to me who did like all the computer coordinates and stuff. So laid on the fire mission, mate, ready to fire, and we're going through the last bits of checks and stuff. And there was a hatch above me that was always open, and there was a hatch to the left where the other guy was. And that one was shut, mate, because it was like 50 odd degrees. You would leave that one open until you fight, just for a bit of breeze, anything you could get. And as I'm typing away, mate, and doing the last checks, the lad next to me said, Andy, there's an aircraft above us. And as I typed away, I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, there's something directly above us. And at the time, mate, I said, well, there can't be because I can't hear anything. There's no noise. And he said, well, what's that then? And as I looked out, mate, through the hatch directly above us was a massive silver sphere that I've always said, mate, was the size of like an old Nissan Micra. So it wasn't small, but it wasn't big. It was big enough for us to see, you know. And it was directly above us, mate. And the wee thing about it was when you fire a missile, you get something called a deconfliction zone. And it's like a massive invisible corridor. And the coordinates of that, mate, get sent to all the aircraft so they don't go inside it, so they don't get hit by a missile.
Right. So
the fact that there was something there, we got on the radio and said there's something in the deconfliction zone. You need to get rid of it, ready to fire. And they came back, mate, and said there was nothing there. There was nothing being picked up on radar. There was nothing being transponded. There was nothing there.
Right.
So to fire the missile, mate, what you had to do was you had, you know, like one of those 10-pin plugs.
Yeah.
And what you would do was you would plug that in, twist it round, then you would arm the missile before you could fire. I've did that as soon as I've armed the missile, that the UFO thing is, I've always said it recognised the missile was armed, and that's when it shot off. But it shot off, mate, at such a speed that there can't have been anybody inside it. Like you would have just been mush. The speed that the thing flew off, do you know what I mean? It was faster than anything I've ever seen in my life. And that was and to be fair, mate, I'd forgot about that. Years went by until the lad who sat next to me rang me one day and said, do you remember that weird thing that we saw in Afghan? And I was like, bloody hell, yeah. Like I'd forgot all about that. And he said, he'd just seen a video of, I don't know if you've seen, Craig, the Mosul Orb. So that came out, mate, in 2016, and that was in Iraq. And he messaged me and said, when he rang me, he said, that's what we saw. But we'd saw it 3 years earlier when we were in Afghan. And I think the US government released footage of that Mosul Orb in Iraq in 2016. So it's out there if anybody wants to go watch it. And that's pretty close to what we saw when we were in Afghan.
So it as far as you're concerned, it definitely wasn't any man-made tech.
You know what, Craig? I've probably changed my view over the years. When I originally saw it, I thought there's no one on this planet that's anything that we own or we use. The more I've looked into it, the more I've researched it. Is it possible that it could be reverse engineered tech? Very possible, mate. And if anybody was going to have the authority to put it in there, then the people who were in Afghan would have. Who was going to stop them, really? So I originally, mate, I didn't think it was, but as times went on, I think maybe there's an element of it could be reverse engineered or something that the military owns, you know?
Weren't the Russians supplying the Afghans with weapons?
What, when I was there?
Yeah.
I don't think so, mate. I think they had a lot of leftover stuff from the 80s from the Russians.
Yeah.
There was a lot of leftover stuff.
Yeah,
that they were using.
Too advanced, doesn't it, for something that was from the 80s?
Yeah.
To be honest.
I mean, the weird thing about that was, mate, when I flew into Camp Bastion, so you do 7 days there, Craig, and you get like acclimatized, all your admin paperwork, get your body armor, all that type of stuff. And the local Afghans, mate, would have little shops inside Camp Bastion, and they would sell like fake DVDs and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But a couple of them, mate, would be tailors, And when I was there, I took some stuff in to get tailored before I flew out, and I took the stuff in, paid him, and the guy was like in broken English. It'd be 15 minutes. I was like, oh, I'll just wait. So I just sat in the chair. And I don't know why he mentioned it to me or what made him say it to me. But he said to me in broken English, if you see any lights in the mountains, don't follow them. And I said to him, what do you mean? What lights? And he said, if you see blue, purple lights, don't follow them. You go missing. Don't come back. And when I spoke to other people there, they believe that the blue and purple lights were the jinn. So they believe in jinn in their culture. And they believe that if you follow those, it was the jinn and you would go. And they said, mate, that loads of people went missing, chasing them. And they said that there was white lights. The white lights were your loved ones. That's what they believed, loved ones letting you know they were okay. But the blue and the purple ones were jinns. And don't follow them in the mountains. Why he felt he said that to me, I don't know. But that was the other weird thing that happened when I was over there.
Yeah. So the mischievous sort of spirits, aren't they? Really, the sort of mischievous genies, aren't they?
Yeah, genies, mate.
Yeah. That's interesting. See, you don't hear about these sort of things on BBC News at 6 o'clock, do you?
You don't, mate. No.
No.
And we did see them a couple of times. We did see them a couple of times in the mountains. Yeah, you could see them. You could see them far off, especially when you were doing checks on the vehicle. And obviously, the vehicle mate had like 3 different types of camera.
Yeah,
had like IR, thermal, and when you were doing checks on them, mate, you would see them in the mountains on a night time.
Right.
You would see them going in and out of the mountains, and they were moving too fast and doing crazy things for it to be somebody with a light or a head torch, you know. And you would see them a couple of times. Not that any other lads were interested. I would screaming at them, look, see the lights, and they'd be like, nah, whatever, we're watching The Expendables on DVD or something. Do you know what I mean?
Some grainy DVD that they'd picked up with Japanese subtitles.
Yeah, exactly, mate.
Yeah, interesting. Now the reason I mentioned Russia is because I have spoken to other guests who've spoken about the Russian military getting hold of downed UFOs in Russia in the same way, obviously, that the Americans and us as well, the British. I mean, we've had, I think it's pretty obvious now we've had downed UFOs in this country.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, mate.
Reverse engineering them, reverse engineering them. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, I've spoken at length about to different people about Rendlesham, for instance, and also Penturch UFO crash as well, which I think, by the sounds of it, I spoke to a number of people. The British government got quite a bit of equipment and reverse engineered that, so it's interesting. That's really why I brought up Russia.
I mean, one thing, mate, that was weird when I was there. So if anyone wants to look it up, mate, I was in Mob Price in Afghan, and that, mate, was pretty safe. We never got attacked. Do you know what I mean? It was in the middle of nowhere, pretty much. And we had a piece of equipment there, mate, that was designed for if anything was fired, this piece of equipment was like a big radar and it could pinpoint to the meter where it'd come from, and had a massive range. I think off the top of the head, maybe it was a 40-mile range. And it was millions of pounds worth of kit and equipment. And that was set up and out in the fob. And every day I'd walk past it and I used to think to myself, why is that here? When it could be used to save lives effectively. You could have it in like the other fob, the lads who I was up there with, they're in Lashkar, and they were getting attacked pretty much every other day. And I thought, why is that not there? To help the lads. And then when I come back and I looked it up, it was made by Lockheed Martin.
Right.
Seems a bit of a synchronicity that we had a piece of equipment that was worth millions of pounds that wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
But it was there the same time that we saw the UFO.
Yeah. So it was there for a reason, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't there for the reason it was alleged.
It was alleged for,
yeah.
So, you have been over to see Paul Sinclair. I know you said you were on his podcast. Been over to Bempton as well. Now, obviously, Bempton's an area that around there is an area of how he describes an area of high strangeness. And obviously there's all sorts of things going on, from UFO sightings to cryptids to animal carcasses to Wolfman, to all sorts of stuff. I've had the honour of speaking to Paul on a number of occasions. So,
Yeah.
although I've never been over there, I'm fairly familiar with what goes on. But I'm interested in your encounter when you were over there. So, what was it like going over there? What was it like meeting Paul? What was your strange encounter?
You know what, mate? I never actually met Paul when I went to Bempton. I'd been on his show before, and so it was this year, mate. I went, so it was the last weekend in February this year. I went, and I never met Paul, mate. I met Paul at the little mini awakening conference they had. Well, I met him in person, but I'd been on the podcast with him a couple of times. I spoke to him on the phone. He had his number. So when I went down to Bempton, mate, I was messaging him, and he was kind of to say, "Yep, go here, go there, have a look at this type thing." So we got there late, mate, on the Friday night, and I was staying in Buckton, which is a stone's throw, mate, from Bempton Cliffs, where all the stuff goes on. So we got down there, mate, about 8 o'clock on the Friday night. Gets checked in, drops the stuff off, and heads straight up to the cliffs. So we get the cliffs, mate, and with it being pitch black, the back end of November, we didn't really know where we were going, so we parks up, gets out, and just heads left from the RSPB, heads left. And when we got down there, mate, it felt quite nice, if I'm being honest. It was a pretty chilled atmosphere. There was a couple of guys fishing because their fishing season, mate, off the cliff tops ends the last day of February.
Yeah.
And that would have been the last night of February. Or getting close to it anyway. So they were fishing. And I don't know whether, Craig, maybe it was because there was other people there and they were fishing. There was activity. I don't know whether maybe that gave me a false sense of security. That's all right down here, nothing's happening, do you know what I mean? So, and we only spent there, mate, maybe an hour and a half, because we'd been at work all day, travelled down, we were tired. Yeah. So heads back to the B&B, mate, nothing happened the Friday night, dead quiet, nothing happened. So gets up on the Saturday, goes down Danes Dyke, goes to Speaking Beach, goes and hits all the spots during the day that I just want to check out and see what they were like in person. So then nighttime comes and we head up to the cliff tops again. So at this point, before we left, I'm excited. I'm like, right, let's hope we get to see some, because Paul's always said for new people, always does stuff. So I'm like, right, let's get up there. So hope to see some lights, see something, do you know what I mean? So I'm all excited. As we're driving up the main lane, mate, I think it's called Coach Lane, to get to the RSPB, as we're driving up that road, mate, I feel like my anxiety, mate's going through the roof. And it probably started at 1. By the time we were at the RSPB, mate, it was off the scale. And I just wanted to turn around and go home. And I thought, I don't want to say anything to my partner and freak her out. So I'll just kind of brave it out and hope that I start to feel a bit better. So put the boots on that, mate, and of course, it was freezing. And we heads off. And instead of going left this time we go right and we walk to the right-hand side of the cliffs. And there's a bench there. So we sat down on this bench and we were quiet for a bit. And then we heard this weird, like, metal clunking noise, a bit like a car door, but it wasn't the car door. It's the best way I can describe it. And we're like, what the F's that? So we've looked at the car park behind us, can't see any lights, can't hear anyone. Well, that was a bit odd. So then that's when the feeling's still getting worse and worse. This one I've said, look, do you feel all right? And then she said to me, no, I feel horrible here. Like, I've got this feeling something's watching me. I don't want to be here type thing. And then a couple of minutes more past me, and then my partner says, oh, I think I've just seen a light on the other side where we were on the Friday night. So then I'm like, what? Right, magic. So we set off, mate, to the other side of left-hand side. And we stood, mate, there's a stand directly in front of RAF Bempton. So that's where we're looking over the cliffs. So as we get down there, mate, we stood. And then, I don't know how long it'd been there, mate, we noticed that there was a plane above us. And it was just circling right above us, just doing like big circles. And I was like, I wonder what on earth that's just hovering about us for. Just constantly, mate, it must be there for about 10 minutes. And then Leanne said, oh, look down there. And when we looked down through the gap, mate, in the cliffs, I've always said it was a boat, Craig, because that's what my brain told me it was. Because what else would it be? I didn't actually see a boat. I just saw loads of lights, blue, red, green, little like a Christmas tree. So we saw that. And then Then we heard people talking at the car park, and we saw head torches and lights. So they've come out the car park, mate, and they've headed directly to where we were on the right-hand side originally. So I said, I know, it could be Paul, could be some of the lads. So I flashed my head torch so they know where we are. So I flashed my head torch, and as soon as they've seen it, they've turned straight round and then come heading straight over to us. So as they've walked over to us, so they've walked straight to us, mate, and they've come straight up onto the stand where we were, and they were stood too close to me, if that makes sense. You know, when someone's in your personal space. So our back mate was right against the stand, and then you've got the cliffs, so there's nowhere for us to go, and they were stood directly in front of us, and he had his head torch on directly in my face, but both of us, so we couldn't see anything. So as he's come over, I've always said, mate, I'm adamant, he told me, he didn't ask me. So instead of saying, is that your Audi in the car park? He said to me, that's your Audi in the car park. So he didn't ask, he told me, which I thought was weird in the first instance. And then I said, yes, that's our car. And then I've said to him, can you turn your head torch off? Because it was blinding us. And he just didn't acknowledge that we'd even asked him, just kept it on and said, what are you doing up here? So at this point, I thought, right, fight fire with fire. So I whacked my head torch on full blast. And then he's turned his off.
All right.
And then it'd be like, can you turn yours off? And I thought myself, I'm not turning mine off now. I want to know who you are, what you're doing down here.
Yeah.
So he said, so that he said to me, what you doing down here? And I do want to say, Craig, I'm looking for cryptids and UFOs. So the first thing that came to my mind was, we're out with your stargazing. First thing that come to my head. So I said, we're out with your stargazing. So then he said, have you seen anything? He said, have you seen anything? Not have you seen anyone? Which was the second weird thing. And I said, like what? And he said, just have you seen anything? Have you seen anyone? And that's when I said to him, who are you? Like, what you doing here? And he said, oh, we're search and rescue. Now, with me telling you that story, mate, about the runner who'd broken his ankle, I've worked search and rescue a few times. And that man was not search and rescue at all. He didn't have any kit on him, Craig, no equipment, weren't dressed like search and rescue. And he said that was search and rescue. And the uniform they had on, they all had the same thing on. And it was, you know, if you go on the motorway and you'll see the highway works and they've got those high-vis tops and bottoms on.
Yeah.
But it wasn't green or orange, mate. It was navy blue. Navy blue with a silver stripe.
Okay.
And because they had my head torch on and I could see them pretty well, it was a man, and then a woman. Three of them were stood in like directly behind each other. And the uniform they had on, mate, was brand new out the packet, you know, when it's still got the crease in.
Yeah.
It was brand new. And everything about them was off. Like I say, mate, there was no radios, there was nothing. So I said, oh, we haven't seen anyone, seen anything. So I said, well, who are you looking for? And he went, oh, we're looking for a nondescript white male. And I said, well, if he's a nondescript white male, how do I know if I've saw him? Like, if you've got no description about, how do I know I'm looking for? It could be three of them, three white guys coming down here, but I don't know if it's them because I don't know what I'm looking for. So I said, look, if I do happen to see this nondescript white male, what do I do? And he said, ring 999. And I said, and tell them what? That I've seen some nondescript white male on the cliff tops. And then at that point, mate, I was trying to think, I wasn't panicking, but I thought, there's something not right here. There's something off. Yeah. So I need to get out of here. So I said, look, if I see anyone, I'll just ring 999 for you. I'll do it for you. So without saying anything, mate, it didn't say bye or anything. They've all turned around at the same time, and then they've all headed off towards RAF Benton on the path. And they've all headed off, mate, with the heads down in single file. And I said, Leanne, they're not looking for anyone. That's not how you look for people. You would be in an extended line. You'll all have your heads up. You'd be looking out.
Yeah.
I said to her, look, on the off chance these guys are who they say they are, let's just go back the car. I don't want them to keep thinking that it's us that they're looking for. So there would have been, I don't know, maybe 300 meters off in the other direction as we've then set off walking towards the car. Hand on heart, Craig, within seconds, they were right behind us. I don't know how they got there that quick. They must have ran. I had to have ran, but I didn't hear them run. And the next thing I know, they were breathing down our necks on that path to go back to the car. And I said to Leanne, look, as soon as we get in the car, I'm just going to open it and just get in the car. Don't worry about your boots ever, just get in the car. So we need to get away from whoever these people are. So then as we get to the car park, mate, I open the car, open the boot, and I'm sling the bags in, and I'm going to be away. Where we're parked, there's a big hedgerow in front of us, and it must be, I don't know, 7-8 foot hedgerow. As we get to the car, mate, Leanne goes to get in the car, half in the car, half out the car. I've threw the bags in, boots down. I've opened my car door. 2 other people jump out of that hedgerow, dressed the same. I don't know where they've come from because I didn't see any head torch apart from the 3 who I was speaking to. Oh. They've jumped out of the hedgerow. Then I'm on the back foot because I'm wedged between now the street behind me and there's 2 in front of me. Them 2 people, mate, then say to me and Leanne, have you been interrogated yet? Then that's when Leanne said to the woman who said that, she was like, what do you mean be interrogated? We've done nothing wrong. Why would we be interrogated? And then the guy who I'd spoke to down at RAF Bempton, he then spoke up to the woman and said, I've spoken to them, they haven't seen anything. It's all right, you can let them go. I'm thinking, what do you mean, let me go? Do you know what I mean? So we've jumped in the car, mate. Obviously, I've locked the doors. I'm sat in there and I said, so they had 2 vehicles with them that weren't there when we arrived. So I said, look, we'll wait for these to go and then we'll just go back to the Airbnb because we were spooked by then.
Yeah.
So we're in the car, mate, and we sat there for about 10 minutes, Craig, and they just weren't moving. They were just sat there in the cars. And I said to Leanne, look, we're just going to go. We'll just go back to the Airbnb. So I reversed out, mate, and I've took off back to go to the Airbnb. As soon as we leave, mate, them 2 cars follow us. There was like a white big pickup truck and a little car, mate. I don't know, like maybe like a little Suzuki type thing, red thing, which weren't search and rescue vehicles either, which is the madness of it. So we've set off, mate, go back to Buckton. As we're coming down, mate, we come to like a T junction and we're going to turn right. And I'm thinking to myself, do not turn right here. And so as I'm stood waiting to turn right, the little red car, mate, turned off left and went away and went up to wherever it went. So then I'm like, panic over. I've turned right, and as I've turned right, mate, then the white pickup trucks turned right and followed us all the way back to the Airbnb. I've then pulled into the Airbnb on the gravel path. We've got out, and then the white pickup truck mate's parked in the driveway, just watching us get out the car. And I'm like, what on earth do you want? Like, do you know what I mean? We're clearly not who you're after or what you're looking for, allegedly. So I said, yeah, look, just go into the Airbnb. So I went to the Airbnb, mate, locked up. And then I assume at some point that white pickup truck has then left. And then, so that was me. So that was originally, mate, that was the weird experience. So when I come home on the Monday, so I travelled home, mate, on the Sunday. So on the Monday, it's going through my head and I was trying to downplay it, that it wasn't weird and it wasn't a strange experience. And it was Leanne who kept saying to me, even if we discredit everything, why did that woman say, have you been interrogated yet? It's such a strange choice of word. Like, if you work in that profession, it would be, has my colleague spoken to you? Have you seen anything? It was such an obvious use of the word. So I thought, right, I'm going to message Bridleton Search and Rescue to see if they were up there. So I sends them a message, mate, on Facebook, finds them on Facebook, sends a message. And I said, look, I was up the cliff top Saturday night. Were yous up there? And were yous up there? That was all I said. And I get the automatic message back, Craig, that says, thanks for your message. This isn't a monitored page, the usual spiel. We'll get back to you when we can. Literally, after that message was sent, they then responded with my full name. So they were like, hello, Andrew Hardy. And I was like, what the hell? Yes, we were up on the cliff tops on Saturday night. So I thought, right, okay. So then I messaged him back and said, oh, perfect. Did you find the man you were looking for? Blocked. So I couldn't message him back. So then fast forward, mate, I then go to the Awakening conference, speak to one of Paul's friends who's got a friend who one of his good friends is in Bridleton Search and Rescue. I tell Paul this story over the phone because Paul wanted to know. He's then said to his friend, can you find out if they're up there? He's then went to Bridleton Search and Rescue because that's where they live, isn't it? Paul and all them. He's then went there and said, we used up the cliff tops on Saturday night. They've then turned around and said, we weren't at work on Saturday night. So they definitely weren't search and rescue, mate. They definitely weren't. We've had it from the horse's mouth that they weren't search and rescue. So who knows who they were?
I think I always get a bit freaked out by this sort of stuff because I'm going to start looking out the front of my house when I finish this this chat with you, just to make sure there's no dodgy car. I live on a cul-de-sac. If there are any dodgy cars parked on the cul-de-sac, then it definitely will freak me out. I remember Paul saying that he thought he was followed once, well, probably more than once actually. But he said he thought he'd been followed in broad daylight when he was in. I think he said it was in Bridlington town centre. So yeah, some government department, the Men in Black.
You know what it was, mate. I went back onto Paul's Paul. I went back on Paul's, mate, to talk about this particular incident. And some of the people asked questions which were really good questions. And one of them was, did they have a Yorkshire accent? Did they sound like Paul? And they didn't.
No.
They had like a robotic monotone voice. Like they had no accent. I couldn't tell you where they were from. They could have been from anywhere in the world, really.
Yeah.
They just spoke English. They didn't have being in the military, mate, they didn't have a military feel to them. Because there would have been certain words you would have used. I would have known if they were military.
Yeah.
Which then leads me to think they were government of some type. Because they weren't search and rescue, they weren't military, which only leaves the government left. And they did have that air of government arrogance to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I believe there was some type of government people. Now, whether that were they there purely by coincidence and they caught me, were they there to interact with Paul, thinking Paul might be up there? Paul thinks that they were up there maybe to see if he was up there, which I'm probably inclined to believe, mate. To be honest with you, it was probably Paul that were there trying to see. Yeah. They just purely happened to get me and Leanne.
Yeah, because he's quite visible, isn't he, Paul?
Yeah, and he's always up there, mate. So chances are you would get him. If you went up there purely by chance, it ended up being me.
He won't forgive me for calling him visible, but he'll know what I mean. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I've spoken to other people, different experiences, different UFO sightings, different variations on a theme, let's say, of similar behaviour from these probably government type people. Different stories from all over different parts of the country, but they all seem to follow a roughly similar MO. And certainly following people away from an area where they've been speaking to people, so following them in the cars and so on seems to be quite a thing that they do to make sure that they're leaving the area, which I think is interesting. I mean, did it? How much did it freak you out? Has it put you off going back, or
no? It definitely hasn't. It definitely hasn't put me off going back, mate. I'm hoping to get back before the end of the year. I definitely want to go back. If to be fair, mate, if it did freak me out at the time, because obviously I was with Leanne, I thought we need to get off the X here, we need to get out of here, because everything about me felt wrong. The entire situation felt wrong. And if I've learned anything about being in the military, you need to teach you, listen to your gut, especially when it comes to things like that. And that's kind of what it felt like, a combat indicator. Everything in the back of my brain, mate, was screaming to me, this isn't right. These aren't search and rescue. Even if they weren't bad guys, mate, why would you lie about being search and rescue?
Yeah.
So I knew we need to get out there. So it hasn't put me off going back, mate. I would definitely go back. I mean, the only thing I would say is I was quite keen of going up there on my own before that happened. I wouldn't go back on my own now. Never. Purely for that reason.
Yeah.
And I saw it originally, mate, it freaked me out. But I definitely plan to go back. The only other thing, mate, about that experience was that when we met those people that night, that was the 15th year anniversary of a man called Russell Bowling going missing off the cliff tops, and they never ever found his body.
Right.
He just disappeared. All they found was his car in the RSPB car park. And his parents and his family are adamant that he wouldn't have done anything to himself. So he had to have been taken by someone. So that was another weird synchronicity as well, mate, that the fact of it was 15 years to the night he went missing. We were up there. We didn't know that, mate, till afterwards, but we were there. And then those people were there 15 years to the day, which was a bit of another weird one.
Yeah. So, we've managed to get through probably about an hour where you haven't plugged your YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah. So my YouTube channel, mate, is Andy H, Shadows and Sightings. And I named it that just because my name's Andy Cardy. And I named it Shadows and Sightings because I didn't know what to name the lights and the things that I'd seen. So that was just a sighting. And the other thing that stuck with me is that shadow figure. That shadow figure is probably the most thing that's, out of all the things that I've seen, mate, apart from the shadow figure and that thing that I've seen, like that devil demon thing.
Yeah.
Those two things, mate, are the things that scare me the most. All the other stuff's kind of just been more interesting, intriguing, caught my attention. So that's why I ended up naming it Shadows and Sightings.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts on there, mate. There's, like I said, there's my own experiences. There's experiences that people have told me. I've had a couple of people email me in, local to where I am. And I ended up discovering, mate, that there was in Newcastle Library, there's a thing called the UFO files there, and that's the Tyneside UFO Society files. And they were lost, mate, for like 60 years. And they were in an archive, and I discovered they were there, and I went up and I've been able to get into the case files, mate. So there's some videos about them on my channel as well, mate. Some stories that go back 60 years that people haven't, maybe some people have never heard before, or definitely not for the last 60 years.
Okay. Well, the link to your YouTube channel, I'll put it in the description so people can follow it and go along and have a look. And hopefully subscribe to your channel. I know how difficult it is to get subscribers. So please do go along and subscribe to Andy's channel. And while you're at it, like and subscribe this channel, please, as well, because there's a lot of work goes into YouTube videos, and it's a bit of a difficult thing to get subscribers sometimes. So please go along, have a look at Andy's YouTube channel and give him all the support that you can. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Really interesting stories. I'd love to have you back on because I think we need to talk about your research that you just mentioned there at the end. So I'd love to have you back on and talk about that.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Yeah,
at some point. Yeah, great to have you on. Thank you very much for coming on, and good luck with your research and the YouTube channel.
Thank you very much, mate. Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.